Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the IDF boosts its forces after a wave of weekend terror. Israel activates its Iron Dome system on the border of Syria, and a star Israeli basketball coach is set to receive the award of a lifetime. I'm Natasha Kirchek here with the latest news in Israel. Caution and resolve are rising in Israel following 6 terror attacks against Israeli soldiers and civilians within the past 72 hours. A reserve officer was seriously injured this morning after being stabbed by a Palestinian terrorist who was taken into custody. And now we're seeing the deployment of additional troops, particularly in Hebron, which has long been a flashpoint of violence. Security officials say the sheer number of attacks shows a terror wave that has plagued the nation over the past year is far from over. The surge began Friday morning in Jerusalem when a Jordanian citizen armed with 3 knives tried to stab a border police officer at the Damascus gate into the Old City. The assailant died during his attack after being shot. Just a few hours later, a bus driver was hurt on a highway just outside of the capital when his vehicle came by unknown perpetrators hurling rocks and glass bottles. A little later, a Palestinian couple tried to ram their moving pickup truck into soldiers who were stationed at the entrance to the West Bank Jewish town of Kiryat Arba. The male terrorist was shot dead and his female accomplice was seriously wounded. No Israelis were injured, but 3 teenagers who were caught in the path of the oncoming vehicle were treated for shock. By nightfall, an Israeli soldier suffered light wounds after being stabbed by an Arab at a checkpoint into a Jewish neighborhood in the nearby city of Hebron. The same thing happened the following morning not far away when another knife-wielding terrorist lunged at other soldiers manning another post. Both assailants were shot and killed during their attacks. These kinds of lone wolf incidents have claimed the lives of 35 Israelis and 4 foreign nationals since October of 2015. Over 200 Palestinians were killed during the same period, while the majority were, according to official estimates, carrying out attacks against Israelis or involved in clashes with security forces. These past few bloody days are heightening concerns that we'll see even more attacks during the approaching Jewish holidays. Tensions on Israel's northern border with Syria remain higher than ever, and now for the first time ever, the Iron Dome missile system has been deployed in defense of the Jewish state against incoming mortar fire from Syria. The Iron Dome shot down 2 stray projectiles fired at the Israeli side of the Golan Heights from Syria twice yesterday. The Israeli army believes it was a result of spillover fighting from the civil war raging in the Arab Republic, just over the frontier. Even though such incidents are frequent, this was the first time the aerial defense system was activated to intercept the errant fire. Israel holds the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad responsible for any cross-border violence, and generally retaliates with airstrikes against Syrian military outposts. Until now, the Iron Dome has only been used to shoot down rockets fired at southern Israeli communities by Palestinian terrorists in Gaza. The latest developments come just after the implementation of a shaky new Syrian ceasefire on Monday that was brokered by Russia and the United States. Former Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon published an op-ed analysis in which he stated the truce has no chance of ending the conflict, which erupted in 2011. Expressing a view shared by many other military experts, Ya'alon explained that a full ceasefire is unlikely to be enacted for many years to come, because it will never be honored by rogue terrorist groups such as ISIS. Ya'alon went on to say that Israel should continue its policy of deterrence to protect the sovereignty of the Jewish state and prevent any of the bloodshed from spreading across the border. The Syrian border is one of Israel's major concerns these days, and events like the Turkish military incursion of Syria only add to Syria's instability. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz sat down with top Israeli expert Dr. Jonathan Spire, who believes that Israel has very good reason to be concerned.
Dr. Jonathan Spire, the Turkish army has crossed their frontier into Syria. They say in order to deal with the border area where ISIS has lodged, but also they have another goal, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the best way to understand the Turkish incursion is to understand that the Turks are determined to prevent the establishment by the Syrian Kurdish forces of territorial contiguity of Kurdish control all the way along that very long 800-kilometer Syrian-Turkish border. And in order to do that, what they've chosen to do is to intervene ostensibly against Islamic State that controls a quite small enclave along the border, but with the real intention, as many of us see it at least, of inserting their own forces and forces aligned with them so as to kind of place a barrier to any further Kurdish push west, which was clearly the Kurdish intention prior to this incursion.
But the Kurdish forces that the Turks are attacking are also receiving aid from the United States. These are forces that are against Assad's government, are fighting against Assad. So there seems to be a counter purpose here.
Yeah, well, I think that it's a hugely complex and confused situation. You're quite right that the Kurdish core of the Syrian Democratic Forces, as they call them, were receiving aid from the United States, and indeed had proved the most effective ground partner for US and coalition air power in the war against Islamic State in recent months. I think what had happened, however, is that the Kurds have their own agenda in this as well, which is, a Kurdish nationalist agenda, quite possibly historically and politically justified. That's a question of discussion. But certainly that was their agenda. They weren't just in it to fight Islamic State. They also wanted to cross the Euphrates and unite these Kurdish cantons. And the Turks had warned against this in the past, and America and the Kurds had said, well, forces west of the Euphrates are not Kurdish-led forces, and the Turks clearly weren't buying it. And so they've decided to sort of take matters into their own hands, not entirely surprisingly, I think.
So there is no complete unity between Kurdish forces. There are the Kurdish forces that are in Iraq and further away in Syria that are trying to, or that have already crossed the Euphrates, as you said, and they've promised not to do so.
Yeah, there's no Kurdish unity for sure. I mean, the Kurd, it's very interesting. There's kind of a contiguous, massive area of Kurdish control now, all the way from the Iraq-Iran border, all the way to deep into Syria. But it's politically divided between two rival would-be sort of pan-Kurdish movements. One is the Kurdish Democratic Party of President Masoud Barzani of northern Iraq, of KRG in northern Iraq, and the other is the Kurdish Workers' Party, the PKK. And the forces in Syria are a kind of franchise of the PKK. And the PKK relations with Barzani's people are not good at all. So yeah, there's no Kurdish unity. But even though this is a franchise of the PKK, they had also proved adept at fighting, adept at organization, and therefore a natural client of the United States. And I think they'll continue to be so. I don't think it's that America is abandoning the SDF, the very successful project of the SDF. But I think what they are doing is kind of setting out demarcation lines, saying, well, we're also allies with the Turks. The Turks don't want you to move west of the Euphrates. Don't move west of the Euphrates, and then we'll continue with the alliance. I think that's the kind of, as it currently appears, the parameter of the events.
Israel has had a friendship with those Kurdish forces that you spoke about. Do we have an interest, and are we, in effect, providing aid and assistance to forces that are fighting against Turkey?
No, not in Syria. Israel has good relations historically with the Kurds, but the particular Kurds that Israel backs and has close relations with is the KDP and Barzani, the people I mentioned a moment ago, in Iraq. Those are Israel's Kurdish allies, effectively. And, of course, these are the bitter political rivals of the PKK, the people whose franchise is operating there in northern Syria. So there's no evidence of an Israeli relationship or alliance with the PKK franchise in Syria, still less any evidence of any Israeli relationship with the PKK inside Turkey. Absolutely not. This is something which Israel would be very, very determined to avoid, in order to preserve relations with Turkey.
So finally, let me ask you this. Is it worrisome to Israel, or should it be worrisome to Israel, that Turkish forces have crossed their frontier into Syria?
Well, it depends how you view Turkey. I mean, my view, at least, is that Erdogan's Turkey is a deeply worrying regime, a regime close to Muslim Brotherhood-style Islamism. The rebel forces, so-called, that it's backing in Syria are Islamists to a man, including some very extreme ones. So yes, I think if one has the view that it is not a good thing for Sunni political Islam to be getting stronger stronger and to be asserting itself across borders, and that is what I think ultimately is happening here, then I think it should be of concern to all of us here in Israel, yes.
Dr. Jonathan Spire, thanks so much for being with us at ILTV.
Thanks, Steve.
Former Israeli leader Shimon Peres still remains in critical condition at the Sheba Medical Center near Tel Aviv. And President Ruvi Rivlin says Peres is a true hero for Israel. Rivlin visited Peres in the hospital last night, where the 93-year-old Israeli statesman is being treated around the clock.
מר פרס מסיים את היום הרביעי לאחר האירוע. כפי שהתקדנו אתכם קודם, מצבו יציב, אך עדיין קשה. מחר במהלך היום נבצע בדיקת CT והערכה נוירולוגית נוספת כדי לקבל את ההחלטות להמשך הטיפול.
Doctors say the former Israeli president is showing signs of improvement, and Rivlin says Israel is prouder than ever of Peres.
I would like to thank all the leaders and all the people all around the world for asking for the best recovery of our ninth president, Shimon Peres. Shimon Peres is a hero for Israel and for many other peoples all around the world.
Peres suffered from a massive stroke last Tuesday after suffering from a series of headaches and breathing problems. The former leader has served in the government for the last 7 decades, holding a huge array of positions from president to prime minister. In 1994, he won a Nobel Peace Prize for his work with the Oslo Accords. And in 2014, he finished his final term as Israeli president while he was serving as the oldest head of state in the world. Peres remains a symbol of Israel, although he suffered from minor health problems over the course of the past year. We recently reported on the serious allegations that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas served as an undercover Soviet agent in Syria during the 1980s. ILTV's Aaron Viner asked veteran Arab affairs expert Yoni Ben Menachem about the credibility of the report and the implications it holds for Israel.
I think this report is very accurate. I think the Russian defector who brought these notes and information from the Soviet Union at that time is very reliable. The information that he brought was checked by many security agencies all over the West, and thanks to this information, they also managed to arrest many Russian spies in Europe. So there's no reason to doubt him. I don't think that Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, was a 007 James Bond. He was not doing such covert operations for the Russians, but he definitely was giving them information because he was a senior member of the PLO in the Central Committee, and he knew about the decision-making of the PLO, and I thought he brought very important information to the Soviets. The fact that Abu Mazen did not deny it yet shows that he's very embarrassed. Actually, he gave an order to the Palestinian figures not to give interviews because wherever they go, the journalists are asking him about was he a spy, wasn't a spy. So I think it was a big embarrassment for Abu Mazen, but this thing is not serious because it's only common. Many Palestinian figures give information away to the Egyptians, to the Jordanians, to the Saudis, to the Emirates. This is not something new. I would not say that they are spies, but there are good intelligence sources. And of course, if you ask people in the street in Ramallah or in East Jerusalem, everybody will tell you that half of the Palestinian Authority are spies for Israel and give information to Israel. So it's not a big deal. But it was a very big embarrassment for Mahmoud Abbas because it was a surprise.
Why is this news about Abbas even being considered such a bombshell, given the fact that Romanian Secret Service police told American officials as far back as 1972 that Abbas's predecessor in office, Yasser Arafat, was not only cooperating closely with the Soviet intelligence, but it was Soviet intelligence that in fact was actually training PLO terrorists at the time?
There's no significance. It's only a nice item. There's no Soviet Union anymore. There's only Russia. Putin was the head of the KGB, so he must know very well the file of Mahmoud Abbas. And I think that the Russian the foreign minister, the Russian foreign minister, his deputy, Bogdanov, was also,
Yes.
he was the ambassador in Damascus when Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas was in Damascus studying, and he also for sure knows the file of Mahmoud Abbas as a Russian spy. So all these figures are now playing in the same arena. They're all promoted. Putin became the president. Bogdanov became the deputy foreign minister. Mahmoud Abbas became the head of Palestinian Authority. So the show goes on with the actors are now upgraded to be more important figures, but this whole show continues.
How concerned should Israel be that, in fact, Putin's current Middle East envoy is Mikhail Bogdanov, and he was based in Syria, working for the Soviet regime, at the same time that now Abbas is alleged to have been there and that they had ties?
We have to wait and see that it happens, but just the fact that they succeed in bringing Mahmoud Abbas to the table and to sit down with Netanyahu, where all the other failed, the Egyptians failed, the Jordanians, the Americans, the Europeans, everybody failed. And if they succeed, I want to see it happening, because at the last minute everything can be cancelled. If you put preconditions on the table again, then Netanyahu will not go to meet with him. But if the Russians will do it, that will show that they are effective, and they can force Abu Mazen to come. But as I told you, I don't believe that Abu Mazen has the power, the capabilities, and the will to do something about the peace process, because it doesn't interest him anymore. He wants to retire quietly. So if this process will begin at least, then maybe the successor of Abu Mazen, that we don't know yet who it will be, maybe he will continue. But I want to see this happening. It's not enough that there is an invitation and both sides have said that in principle they agree to meet. Different things can happen. Tomorrow there can happen things in the West Bank. Palestinians might get killed by the IDF, and then he will take it as an excuse and he said, I'm not going to go because Israelis killed Palestinians. Many things can happen by then. So I want to see it happening, and then we will talk again.
The Holocaust may have taken place over 70 years ago, but the tragedy is as relevant today as it was then. Now, a film co-produced by Israelis is being nominated for an Emmy for having reminded the globe of the horrors of World War II. Let's check it out.
You could never associate what you were seeing with your own life.
You spend years preparing yourself to die, and suddenly you're still here.
I thought as time went by, it might leave me. I wanted to forget.
Learns the lesson these pictures teach. Night will fall.
Joining us now in the studio is Aviv Aldema, the Emmy Award-nominated film sound designer for Night Will Fall. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, so to begin, tell us about the story behind this film.
This film it's a bit complicated to explain, but this film tells the story of another film. In 1945, when the Allied forces first came into the camps all over Europe to liberate them, they started to see all these horrible things, horrible horrors that the Nazis have done there. And they immediately understood that they have to film everything and document everything so, next generations will have some proof of what happened there. They started to film it in a very organized and in an organized way, and sent materials back to London and started editing the film. They actually brought Alfred Hitchcock back from LA to London to oversee and direct the editing. And they were trying to make a film that will remain after as a proof, to tell the story of everything that happened there. Later the war ended, and I guess political agendas changed, and they decided to stop the editing of the film, and it was never completed, never released. The film I worked on was made 2 years ago, and it tells the story of that other film, tried to investigate and to find out why they decided to stop making it. Actually, 2 years ago, the film was finally made. They edited it according to the guidelines that Hitchcock wrote, and you can actually see the full original film now,
Wow.
and there is another film, Night Will Fall, that tells the story of the production of the original film.
No, this is really amazing because that film was some of the most raw footage that existed of the concentration camps of Auschwitz, from what I understand, after they were liberated. So this is stuff that most people haven't seen before, and it's just been sitting there for so long, and now
Right.
you guys made a film about this, so that's really impressive. Now, how did you get involved with this film?
And the main producers of the film and the director, Andre Singer, are British, but there are different countries involved, some money from Denmark, some from the States, from HBO, and there is also an Israeli co-producer, Filipa Kowarski. So she made the match. She brought me together with Andre Singer. We immediately clicked, and it was a real pleasure to work with him. He's an amazing man.
And so you composed, or you put together, you designed the sound for
Yes.
this film, which is amazing because you can even hear in the trailer, that's your work.
Yeah. Just a few words. I mean, there is the music, which was composed by actually the director's son, Nick Singer, and there's sound design. Sound design is everything you hear, starting from dialogue, but all the sound effects, all the ambience, all the world of sound that's going with the picture.
Which is unbelievably difficult to do. I don't think I could ever do that, but it's amazing because you don't actually understand what goes into the sound in the films that you're watching, especially something like this where you're taking film that's coming from,
Right.
70 years ago. It's unbelievable. Now, why do you think the stories of the Holocaust remain so relevant today? Why are people still interested in watching this? I mean, the film got Emmy nominated right now, and this is about events that took place over 70 years ago.
Right. First, I hope that I'm right, but I think this event in history is unique and is something that we all hope will never happen again. But it was so extreme and so huge that till today people are amazed that things like that could really happen. It's unbelievable for us to see how the world can come to this situation. For us as Jews, of course, it's even more strong because we know people that were there. A lot of us have parents or grandparents that were there. So for us, the story, of course, is much more important or existing in our lives for daily. But I think it's not only Jews. I think all over the world, people understand the uniqueness of this event in history, and I hope it will be a one-time thing that will not happen again.
Well, seeing this footage will hopefully encourage people not to do something like this in the future. Now, let's talk about the Emmys. I understand you're heading to the U.S. on Sunday. How does it feel to be having this film, made, also co-made by Israelis, being nominated for such a major award?
It's exciting. It's not something I used to. I mean, here in Israel, I was nominated sometimes and even won some awards, but it's completely different. I mean, Americans, like Americans, do everything on a huge scale. It's a big celebration. It's like the top. This specific Emmy is for documentaries and news shows on American television, and it's a huge event. Everyone on the industry is going to be there. And I think if it's exciting for an American, it's definitely exciting for me coming from this small studio in Tel Aviv. Unbelievable.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations. This is amazing. Again, we're seeing the Israeli film industry is beginning to boom. Companies like HBO are picking up shows here from Israel and readapting them. And now this amazing film has been Emmy nominated. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It looks like the beloved Israeli basketball coach David Blatt is about to be awarded an NBA championship ring, even though he was fired from coaching the Cleveland Cavaliers mid-season. The star Israeli coach formerly coached the Cleveland Cavaliers, and at the time held the best record in all of the Eastern Conference for the season. Despite his success in coaching the championship-winning team, Blatt left in the middle of the season, reportedly due to his shaky relationship with the Cavs star LeBron James. Blatt had won 53 games in his first season with the team, a 64% winning percentage that was the best for any Cavaliers coach in history. The Cleveland Cavaliers actually went on to win the NBA championship in 2016 and are set to receive their championship rings on October 25th. In June, a Knesset member from the Zionist Union Party wrote to the owner of the Cavaliers, asking him to award Blatt with a championship ring as well, since the Israeli coach played such a key role in building up the team. It turns out there's a precedent for a coach who left mid-season to receive a championship ring. The former coach of Miami Heat, Stan Van Gundy, was awarded a championship ring even though he resigned 21 games into the season. Now the Akron Beacon-Journal is reporting that Blatt will also be awarded that very same championship ring, and Israelis are rejoicing around the country. Blatt has already started coaching a new team in Turkey, but he remains an idol to Jewish fans around the world, and especially in Cleveland. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. They say that progress is impossible without change, and that those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. So today's word is shinui, which means change in Hebrew. Shinui can be challenging whether it comes in the form of changing jobs or changing countries, but they say the secret to handling shinui well is not to focus on fighting the old, but rather on building the new. Don't be afraid of shinui because it's leading you to a new beginning. I can tell you that from first-hand experience, when I made Aliyah and immigrated to Israel, I made a huge life shinui and it was stressful, but the change was totally worth it. Sometimes it just takes time to see the beauty in your shinui. But believe me when I say it, it's worth the wait because change almost always brings opportunity. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. It's the beginning of a new week. Monday is expected to be sunny with a high of 87 degrees. The sun should stay out through Tuesday with the temperature going up to 89. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.78 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our next update at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.